Why do incompetent people so often acquire absolute power? It rarely happens by accident. Often it is a calculated strategy. Over 2 millennia ago, King Solomon documented a deeply destructive political pathology. He observed that a paranoid ruler will intentionally invert the competence of his own society. The strategy is brutal but effective. The ruler deliberately appoints foolish, inexperienced people to the highest positions of authority, while systematically demoting wealthy, wise statesmen into lowly, humiliating roles. He does this to strip the state of its institutional competence. By sidelining anyone with genuine talent, the tyrant eliminates the very people who might threaten his fragile ego or challenge his grip on power. But King Solomon warns that this tyranny is a self-destructive boomerang. He writes that a leader who digs a ditch to corrode the class system will inevitably fall into it, and one who breaches established legal boundaries will be poisoned by the resulting corruption. When a paranoid leader hollows out a nation's legal frameworks and persecutes its intellectual class to protect himself, the ensuing rot destroys both the state and the tyrant. Surviving this kind of decay requires a cure rooted in relentless, proactive investment, and that survival begins with the hard realities of military readiness. Complacency during peacetime allows a military's iron to grow blunt. Eventually, the leader pays a massive, bloody cost in emergency troop reinforcements. Yet a sharp military is completely useless if a society's internal values are poisoned. King Solomon compares this to an unenchanted snake. A citizenry lacking deeply rooted ethical education will inevitably turn on itself. The opposite of this genuine moral education is political sophistry. Instead of teaching ethics, a state might rely on charismatic speakers who use smooth, manipulative rhetoric to whimsically control a hedonistic public. Ultimately, these master sophists become ensnared in their own nonsense. Because they are entirely bereft of actual virtue, they can only sell empty promises that inevitably collapse under scrutiny. National security cannot be outsourced to reactive troop surges or manipulative messaging. It demands continuous investment in both physical defense infrastructure and the ethical education of the citizens. This brings us to the daily maintenance of the state. A functioning government is impossible under a juvenile leader who chases short-term thrills. It requires a noble, disciplined king who governs with profound maturity. King Solomon uses the metaphor of a leaking roof to illustrate this point. Homeland security mirrors a physical house, demanding the continuous, disciplined maintenance that prevents the decay brought on by lazy administration. Once that physical security is established, a state must ruthlessly pursue economic prosperity. While bread and wine bring joy to the populace, Solomon states pragmatically that money is the answer to everything. Even in a wealthy, well-maintained state, traitors will emerge. A ruler must deploy strict intelligence networks, warning detractors that even a whisper of treason is dangerous because a bird of the air shall carry the voice. Stable governance relies on a strict hierarchy of needs. Disciplined leadership ensures physical security, and that security creates the economic prosperity that keeps the population fed, wealthy, and far away from revolt. But how does a state survive the crises it cannot predict? The ultimate evolutionary adaptation against absolute uncertainty is a massive, deliberate investment in broad intellectual resilience. King Solomon commands leaders to cast their wisdom far and wide. This means investing heavily in the 7 worldly wisdoms: philosophy, science, language, history, law, art, and music, while anchoring them all with an 8th theological wisdom. He illustrates this with the rain cloud versus the fallen tree. A fallen tree's value is strictly limited to the exact spot where it lands. A rain cloud, however, spreads its life-giving water across massive, varied distances. This wide-ranging educational model is necessary because humans cannot foresee the specific nature of the crises that will strike the land. Broad educational diversity serves as a society's ultimate anti-fragile strategy, providing the array of tools and perspectives required to absorb an unknown disaster. The greatest danger in preparing for the unknown is the paralysis of perfection. King Solomon warns that he who anxiously watches the wind will never sow, and he who merely gazes at the clouds will never reap. The divine mechanics driving the future remain an entirely closed book to humanity. Using that uncertainty as an excuse to delay your investment guarantees absolute failure. Relentless action is the only defense. Aggressively sow your seeds of wisdom in the morning and do not rest in the evening. King Solomon has laid out the exact blueprint for a civilization's survival. Next time we turn from the survival of the state to the individual, confronting the fleeting joy of youth, the reality of physical aging, and our unavoidable mortality.